Hey everyone, welcome to topic number 17, operations of real numbers. So in this video, we're going to talk about add, subtract, and add and subtract what we so-called real numbers. So remember from previous topic, real numbers are basically your integers, your whole numbers, and your fractions. Okay, so all three of those considered as real numbers. So before we talk about how to add and subtract real numbers, I will actually introduce a algebra word. Okay, so you're gonna hear this word a lot when we begin to talk about algebra materials. Okay, especially for the student that need to take Math 108. This word has been talked about a lot. So, what is a term? Okay, if you can understand this concept, then algebra gets a lot easier. What is so-called a term? A term, if you think about it, it's like an object. Okay, it's like an object. So here, if I would draw a square or a rectangle, if I draw a rectangle, one rectangle is an object. Okay, so a term is like an object. So here we see one rectangle. Okay, so here I'm going to draw a triangle. So right now you see a rectangle and a triangle. So you have two terms. Okay, so in this video I will explain what a term, what is an object, and how do you distinguish between two objects, and basically how you can add and subtract them. Okay, so paper, a term is referring to as a number. Any number that you see, a 4, a -7, an 8, every single number is considered as one term, one object. A term is also a variable. Okay? A single lettered variable is considered as one object, one term, like x alone, y alone, z alone, t alone. Okay, any letter by itself is considered as one object or one term. Now, the definition gets a little bit tricky here. A term is also considered as a product of some numbers. Sorry about this. A product between some numbers. Okay. My example here is 2 times 3. Yes, 2 times 3, you see two numbers. But the word product means multiplication. A multiplication between anything is only considered as one object. 2 times 3 is equal to 6. 6 is a number, 6 is a term. And the 6 comes from the 2 times 3. So the entire 2 times 3 is considered as one term. Multiplication between anything is one term. So for example, okay, if you take a look at my rectangle here, rectangle is one object. Okay, here in the inside of it, I'm gonna have three different dots. Okay, three different dots by themselves is like three objects. Okay, I can say dots, I can say circle. All right. But when I put these three dots inside this one rectangle, in the moment I pick up, okay, the moment I actually pick up this rectangle that has three dots inside of it, this whole thing becomes one term, one object. Okay. So what that means is when we're talking about multiplication between anything, is considered as one term, one object. It's just inside that one term, you have two different factors, right? 2 and 3 are the factor of 6. You have other things inside of it, but together, being inside of one thing, okay, is considered as one term. Just like when we go shopping, when we go shopping buying groceries. So let's say we bought 5 cans of green beans, okay? When we put all 5 cans inside that one bag, then the moment we pick up that bag of 5 cans of green bean, that one bag is considered as one term. Okay, it's kind of strange. What is considered as a term, a product multiplication between anything is considered as one term. For example, if I have x, y, z, okay, this is not three different variables. That's not what we're talking about here. Between the x, the y, and the z's are multiplication. So x, y, z is only considered as one term, one object. It's just inside this one term, I have three different factors in them. Okay. A quotient means division. A quotient of some numbers is also considered as one term. Okay. I'm not saying every fraction is a term. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying a division between some two numbers is considered as one term. So 3/4 is equivalent as 3 divided by 4. So 3 divided by 4 is considered as one term. So if I have a half times 8/3, okay, here you're looking at two different fractions, right? But this is not two terms. Why? Because the multiplication between anything is only considered as one term. Okay, so I'm not saying every fraction is a term. Okay, it depends on the operation. So if I have a half divided by 8/3, division between any number, this is considered as one term. Okay. So the question is, sorry about that. This is all the line right here. So the question is, what do we use to separate between terms? How can I distinguish from one object to the next object? Okay. How do I distinguish between one term to next term? And the way we do it is using the addition and subtraction signs outside the parentheses to separate my terms. Okay. Remember, here you're looking at a rectangle and a triangle. This is two different objects. How do you know this is two different objects? What do you must see in order to know these two objects are separate objects? And the answer to that question is, most people don't even think about it. The answer to that question is the space between them. The space between them tells me that this is actually two different objects. Okay. So it's kind of weird, because what happened if I would draw you a rectangle, right? And then I'm going to take this triangle and put inside of it. Okay, now this is how many terms now? If I put that triangle inside the rectangle, instantly this becomes how many terms? One term. Okay, so is the space between them is how I know this is two separate terms. But the moment I put them inside of it, right? If I put a triangle inside this rectangle, these two things merge, so it becomes one object. So in order to identify how many terms you have, okay, what we will do is look for addition and subtraction signs outside the parentheses first to see how many terms I have. Okay, this is all a lot like what we did when we do the order of operations. We always using the addition and subtraction signs outside the parentheses, brackets, to distinguish how many, to distinguish how many things we have. Okay. So the way how we worked out the order operation is actually using the concept of terms. So all those highlighting I did when we do the order operation, the purpose of highlighting was to show you, to begin to show you how to distinguish terms. All right. Once you locate these addition and subtraction signs outside the parenthesis, whatever is in front, in between, and behind those addition and subtraction signs is considered as one term. Okay. So this problem, identify the number of terms in each following expression. 2 minus 4 is just 2 minus 4, right? But to know how many terms you have, find these addition and subtraction signs outside the parentheses. So here, so subtraction sign is right here. What's in front of it is one term. What's behind it is one term. Okay. It's just so that the sign will always follow with the terms. Okay. The signs that you see, this subtraction sign actually go with the terms that's right, that's followed behind it. So technically, this subtraction sign belongs to the second term. So now I actually have two different terms. And what are my two terms? My two terms are a positive 2 and a negative 4. There's two different objects. Okay, the problem reads it as 2 minus 4. But when you say that's minus sign, when you say that subtraction sign helps you to identify how many terms you have. Okay, this is the way how we look at algebra. All right, take a look at this problem. 3 minus negative 8 plus 2. See the 2 in the parentheses? There's nothing in between, so it is actually automatically a multiplication. So this is actually plus 2 times 3. So every time when you say addition and subtraction, every time when you say plus or minus, those are the signs that you need to distinguish how many terms you have. 3 minus, right? So in front of subtraction sign, that's one term. Okay, 3 minus negative 8 plus, that plus sign right there, right? Distinguish between terms. So in between the subtract and the plus sign, this must be one term. Behind the plus sign, 2 times 3 must be one term. Okay, so the sign go with the terms that follows. So that means this subtraction sign go with the negative 8. This plus sign actually go with the 2 times 3. So in this problem, we have 3 terms. What are my 3 terms? A positive 3 and a negative. So how would you say this term is? This is negative how much? This is actually negative 1 times negative 8. Well, Mr. Chan, how do you know there's a 1 there? Well, if it wasn't a 1 there, then they would have told me there's another number there. Just like this term I highlight in green, right? That's positive how much times the 3? That's a positive 2 times the 3. Okay, so right here, it's not an imaginary 1. It's not an imaginary 1 because remember a long time ago in one of the video we said that every number is always times by 1, right? So this negative 8 is also times by 1 as well. Negative 8 is the same as 1 times negative 8. Okay, so what that really means is every object is always times by 1. So we know negative 8 is a term, right? But this term has two different signs. It has a subtraction sign in front of it and along with a negative sign. So this subtraction sign go with that term that follows. So this negative sign, this subtraction sign got to be part of that second term. Well, so in reality, your second term is really what? It's really a negative 1 times what? That negative 8. Okay, it's kind of strange way of looking at it. Okay, so we'll talk about multiplication here in a little bit. All right, 2x minus 3y plus 4. Right, I say 1 minus and I say 1 plus. So using the addition and subtraction signs outside the parentheses to separate my terms. So my first term is 2x. My second term got to be the negative 3y. Okay, subtraction sign go with the term that follows. So behind the plus sign, that 4 must be a term, and the sign and the plus sign go with the 4, so that will be positive 4. Okay, so do me a favor, hold up 3 fingers. If you hold out 3 fingers, how many space do you see between your fingers? 2 spaces. That's how you distinguish between how many terms you have. All right, this one right here is an equation. How do I know this is an equation? Because equation has equal sign. Okay, the purpose of the equal sign is to let you know, number 1, the left side equal to the right side. Okay, number 2, the purpose of equal sign is to distinguish between the left side and the right side. So this left side, this is called an expression. An equation is simply made out of 2 expressions, one on the left, one on the right. Okay, so an expression is simply something made out of a bunch of terms. So if I have a circle, a triangle, and a rectangle. Together, this is actually called an expression. Okay, this expression consists of 3 terms. All right, so if you look on the left side of the equal sign, there's a subtraction sign here outside the parenthesis. So one subtraction sign separates 2 terms. What's in front of the subtraction sign is a term. What's behind the subtraction sign is a term. So I highlight all the way to the equal sign, right? This is the left side of it. And this subtraction sign goes with the term that follows. So my first term is 5x. My second term is -7 times parenthesis x minus 2. On the right-hand side, there is 1 plus sign separate between 2 terms. So 2x is 1 term, and the last term, positive 4. So this equation has 4 terms. Okay, this has got 3 terms. All right, so this is a little bit tricky right here. Okay, between the 2 and a parenthesis is multiplication. So this expression has how many terms? Remember, we are looking for addition and subtraction signs that are outside the parenthesis. So if there's no plus or minus signs outside the parenthesis, then this whole thing is only what? It's only 1 term. All right. It's just that there's a difference between, okay, there's a difference here. This whole thing is 1 term, but inside the parenthesis, there is a subtraction. Okay. Think of the parenthesis is like my grocery bag. Okay. If you open the grocery bag, what do you see? 5 cans of green beans, right? Okay. In our case here, there's only 1 subtraction sign, so there's only 2 terms in there. So in this bag, parentheses are like the bag. In this bag, there's only 2 cans inside of it. So x is 1 term, and -4 is another term. So it's a different question, okay? There's a different question. The problem itself has 1 term. But if you look inside the problem, inside the parenthesis, you have what? 2 different terms. Okay, why does it matter? Well, if I give you a problem that says 2 times 4x, well, 2 times 4x is only 1 term, right? Because there's no plus or minus signs outside the parenthesis. So now if you actually look inside the parenthesis, there is no plus or minus sign. So this problem is 1 term, and inside the parenthesis is also 1 term. So this one has 1 term inside. The one above it is 2 terms inside. So what's the difference? Well, the 2 answers will definitely be different. And how we actually simplify these 2 expressions will also be different. So everything we do in algebra, okay, is actually dictated by how many terms we have. Okay. All right. Let's continue. Like terms. Okay, so you're gonna start hearing me saying a lot of these words. Like terms are referring to terms with the same variable and the same exponent. Okay. How do we classify the 2 terms are alike? We go by their variables and the exponents. Okay. So are 2x and 2x squared like terms? No, they are not. Even though both terms using variable x, but the exponents are different. On top of this x, you don't see an exponent, so that means it's a 1 there. Okay, so since the exponents are different, then they are not like terms. Well, what's the big deal about like terms? Well, combine like terms. Combine like terms means, the word combine means add or subtract. Okay, combine means add or subtract. So combine like terms means we can only add or subtract terms with the same variable and the same exponent. If they don't have the same variable, same exponent, we cannot combine them. That means we cannot add or subtract them. Okay, so now the question is, when do I add them and when do I subtract them? Okay, so a lot of students get confused with this. So it's real simple. Once you understand terms, then it gets easier when you add and subtract. You will always add when the like terms have the same sign. And we got to keep the sign of the term. We will subtract when your terms have different signs. Okay. So whenever you have to subtract because your two terms have different signs, then if there is more negative than positive terms, then the answer will be negative. If there are more positive than negative terms, the answer will be positive. So let's go back up here. Remember the 2 minus 4? Okay, so here is where it gets weird. The question says 2 subtract 4. Do I subtract these two numbers because it tells me to subtract? Or do I subtract these two numbers because these two terms have different sign? Go with the second one. We subtract because the two terms have different signs. You never go by what it says right here in the middle. The subtraction sign is, we simply use a subtraction sign as how we separate the two terms. So my first term is positive 2. My second term is negative 4. These two terms have different signs, so we will subtract. So when we normally subtract 2 and 4, we get a 2. Because I have more negative term than positive, then the answer will be negative. Remember, there's a lot of different ways to learn how to add and subtract integers. Okay, most of y'all learned this at a younger age with the number lines. Okay, but eventually, when we get to talking about algebra materials, you just got to know what the answer is. When I say 2 minus 4, you just need to know that's negative 2 because the two terms have different signs. You subtract negative 2. Okay. All right, let's go down here. All right, perform the following operations. Okay, negative 2 plus 7. Do I add these two numbers? No, you don't. You never go by what it says right there in the middle in the operation. You use that operation words as separating terms. My first term is negative 2. My second term is positive 7. Term with different signs, we subtract. So when I normally subtract 7 and 2, I get a 5. Since I have more positive term than negative, my answer should be positive 5. Well, students say, well, I thought positive negative makes a negative. Well, positive and negative doing what to make a negative? You know what I'm saying? It's not a good way of saying things. Okay. Now, before I move on to the 5 minus 6, I want to remind you, a while ago we learned something about commutative property. Commutative property allows me to swap the order of my numbers, right? Truth to be told, that definition is actually designed for here for algebra purpose. Okay. Commutative property is really saying you can swap the order of your two terms. You can swap the order of your two terms. Okay. Because, let me go back. If I draw you a rectangle and a triangle, right? I got two terms here, but then who's going to stop me from moving the triangle to the front of the rectangle? Don't I still have the same two terms, two objects? I sure do. So commutative property allowed me to swap the order. Okay, so my first term is negative 2. Second term is positive 7. What happens if I move pick this positive 7 up and put it right in front of it? Well, my problem becomes 7, which is positive 7 minus 2. All right? Because my first term is positive 7, my second term is negative 2. So the problem now reads as 7 minus 2, which is 5. Okay. All right, 5 minus 6, subtraction sign here, outside the parentheses, separate my 5 away from my negative 6. So these two terms have different sign. Different sign we will subtract. Normally when I subtract 5 and 6, I get a 1. Since there's more negative than positive term, my answer will be negative. Okay? So when people say negative negative makes a positive, what they are really referring to is multiplication and division. Okay, so I do not say negative negative makes a positive. I will literally say a negative number times it or divides it. The slash here means or divides another negative number. You will always get a positive answer. Okay. This rule is different. This rule are different than my add and subtraction rules. Okay. They're totally different. They look similar, but they are different. A positive number multiply or divides another positive number. My answer will still be positive. Okay, positive number times or divides a negative number is a negative answer. Negative number times or divides a positive number. The answer would be negative. Okay, so think about this. There is a difference between a negative 2 minus 3 versus negative 2 times a negative 3. What's the key difference? Well, remember, multiplication between anything is one term. One term is different than subtraction sign here, separate between two terms. This is two terms. One term is different than having two terms. So the operation, the answers are different. Okay, you cannot mix the two together. That's how people get confused. When you say negative 2 minus 3, that means you're doing add and subtract. Add and subtract has their own set of rules. Okay, term with the same sign, you will what? Terms with the same sign, you will do what? You will add. Normally, when you add, when you add 2 and 3, you get a 5. Since both of these terms are negative, then my answer will be negative. That's what this right here is saying. Keep the signs of the terms. Okay, terms plural. Negative 2 times negative 3 is not plural. This is only one term, not plural. So negative 2 times negative 3, negative number times a negative number will give me a positive answer. Positive 6. There you go. Okay. So here I just wrote two different ways, writing a different ways how we write multiplication. So this is negative 2 times negative 3. We already said it's positive 6. Okay, gotta say times. Negative 2 times 7. Okay, negative 2 times positive 7 is going to be negative 14, right? A negative number times a positive is negative answer. A negative 20 divided by negative 10. All right, division between anything is one term. So negative number divided by negative number is positive, right? So my answer is positive 2. Positive 21 divided by negative 3. 21 divided by negative 3. Positive divided by negative will be negative answer. It'll be negative 7. Okay. All right. So let's come back here and talk about this thing right here. It turns out every term can only have one sign. Every term can only have one sign. So if you look at this example here, negative 7 plus a negative 2. The addition sign here separate my two terms. My first term is negative 7. My second term is how much? It's negative 2, right? But the plus sign go with the negative 2. So my second term has two different signs. Every term can only have one sign. So technically, this second term is really negative 1 times negative 2, which will actually become, positive 1, sorry. Positive 1 times negative 2, which will give you negative 2. So your second term is really just a negative 2. your first term is really a -7. So now these two terms have the same sign. Okay, so my answer got to be -9. Term with the same sign, we add, right? Since both of them are negative, my answer is still negative. Okay, remember there's a lot of different ways to do this. Okay, there's a lot of different ways to learn how to do add and subtract integers. But eventually, when we get to algebra expressions, when we start adding all these variables to it, okay, you're not going to see much of these parentheses. The purpose of these parentheses here is actually trying to tell you there's a negative number inside of it. Okay, other than that, it really serves no purpose because there's no operation inside that parenthesis. All right, check it out. This one, 6 minus -8. See that subtraction sign right here? Separate between two terms. First term is positive 6. Second term is really negative how much? It's really saying -1 times -8. All right. So my second term has two signs, right? Every term can only have one sign. -1 times -8 is really +8. First term still 6. So this problem is really saying 6 plus 8, which we know is 14. Okay, -18 plus 5, right? You say plus, this plus sign is outside the parenthesis, so there's two terms. -18 is the first term, second term is +5. So terms with different sign, one positive, one negative term, we subtract, so that will give me -13 because I got more negative than positive. All right, now here we go. According to order of operation, we always got to do addition and subtraction from left to the right. Okay, I hope you remember that. Now, it gets a little bit weird here. Now, according to these commutative and associative properties, we can actually combine any two terms first of our choice. We don't always got to do a left to the right when we do add and subtract. Okay. For add and subtract, we don't have to do it from left to right. We can actually pick any two first of my choice. Okay. We can actually multiply any two number first. Now, the commutative and associative property doesn't really apply to divisions. Okay. But it applies for add and subtract, and you also apply for multiplication. So I can do -2 plus 10 first and then -7, or I can do 10, right? That's one term, right? +10, because there's subtraction sign, there's addition and subtraction sign. So I have -2 is one term, +10 is one term, and -7 is another term. So what happens if I will combine the +10 and the -7 together? Then I can just simply say this is 10 minus 7, which give me a 3. But what kind of 3 is that? Every term got to have a sign. 10 minus 7 is +3, right? With a -2 in the front. These two terms have different signs, so we will subtract. So my answer, +1. Right? Because I got more positive than negative. Or I can do -2 minus 7 first. Term with the same sign, we add. So that gave me -9. All right, +10 is still there. So 10 minus 9 is 1. Same thing. Okay. Or I can say -2 plus 10 first. Term with different sign, we subtract. So I get 8. Then 8 minus 7 is also 1. All right. So when you see a problem like this, just make sure every term can only have one sign. Okay. So 14 plus -12 minus. Okay. So my first term is 14, +14. My second term is +1 times -12. And my last term is really -1 times -3. Okay, so my first line after this is just go ahead and write down one sign for one term. 14 still positive. +1 times -12 is -12. -1 times -3 is +3. So 14 minus 12, okay, I'm going to do it from left to right here, is 2. 2 plus 3, my answer, 5. That's how we do this. Okay. So addition and subtraction signs outside the parentheses always help me identify the terms. Okay, perform the following operation. So these two are multiply and divide. So we're going to use the multiplication division rule. So negative fraction times a positive fraction. My answer will be negative. Let's go ahead and take care of my signs. Okay. All right. So now I'm just focused on fraction. Multiplication of fraction means we will reduce top and bottom first before we multiply. So I know the top 8, bottom 4 can be reduced by 4. They give me 1 and 2, right? I know the 3 on the top and the 15 on the bottom can be reduced by 3. That will give me 1 and 5. So 1 times 2 is 2. 1 times 5 is 5. My answer, -2/5. Okay. All right. This problem here on the right, this parenthesis inside of it is trying to show you there's a negative. It's a negative fraction. So let's go ahead and take care of my sign. Negative divided by a negative. Negative fraction divided by negative fraction give me a positive answer. So go ahead and don't worry about the signs. Division of a fraction means we will times the reciprocal. So my second fraction becomes 15/8. My first fraction, 4/5. Oh, Mr. Chan, what happened to your negative sign? I already took care of it. Negative divided by a negative fraction is a positive answer. So I don't have to worry about the sign anymore. My answer will be positive. Now I reduce top and bottom. That's 1 and 3. 4 and 8 reduced by 4. That's 1 and 2. My answer is 3/2. There you go. Okay, remember now, I don't know if y'all ever noticed, multiply and divide are similar. Add and subtract fractions are similar. Remember, add and subtract fraction, the first thing we do is find the LCD. Okay, that's the reason why. Because add and subtract fractions is combining terms. Combining term is different than multiplying and dividing. Multiplying and dividing is only one term. Add and subtract is combining multiple terms together. Okay, so let's take care of this second term here. -5/12 minus a negative, right? So my second term is -1 times -2/3. So my second term is really a positive 2/3. Okay, every term can only have one side. So now it makes it a little bit easier, right? So now I'm adding two fractions. So the first thing I do is find the LCD. So that's negative plus 12 is a LCD. 12 going to 12 one time, so the numerator times by 1, so that's still 5. 3 going to 12 4 times, numerator times by 4, which is 8. So now while I'm adding the numerator here, the negative sign I'm actually using a negative sign along with my numerators. So here I'm going to say -5 plus 8. Term with different sign. -5 plus 8. Term with different sign, we will subtract. When I subtract 8 and 5, I normally get a 3, right? Since I got more positive than negative, there'll be positive 3 over LCD is still 12. So if I reduce that by 3, my answer, positive 1/4. Okay. Now this one right here is already, every term is only one sign. So I can go ahead and start. The LCD between 6 and 4, got to be 12 again. All right. So my first denominator is 6 going to become the new 12 times by 2. Numerator times 2, that will become 10. 4 going to 12 times by 3. Numerator also increased 3 times, which will be 3. So this problem now, when I'm combining the numerator, I say -10 plus 3. These two terms have different signs, so we will subtract. When you normally subtract 10 and 3, you get a 7. But I got more negative than positive, so my answer will be -7/12. Okay. All right, so let's go over some of the homework questions. What are the steps on how to identify terms? Okay, the steps to identify term, I think it's on the first page. Okay, what are the steps? Just copy these down. These are the 2 steps. All right, what are like terms? Okay, into the definitions on the handouts. So the definition like terms right here on the second page, like terms are term with the same variable and the same exponents. All right, let's go to the next one. When combine like terms, terms with different sign, we will do what? Combine means add or subtract, right? So terms with different sign, we will subtract. All right. A negative and a negative makes a positive when 2 terms are being combined. True or false? False. When people say negative negative makes a positive, it's actually referring to what? It's actually not even 2 terms because multiplication and division is only 1 term. Okay, so all this thing here does not make any sense whatsoever. Okay, so negative and a negative makes a positive when the 2 numbers are being multiplied or divided. Okay, that's why I don't even like to say negative, negative, and then negative makes a positive. I like to say a negative number times it or divides a negative number makes a positive. Okay. All right. Consider the following operation. Enter the expression as each term with only 1 sign. Okay. So what that means is you need to identify how many terms you have. So for the term that have 2 signs, you need to go ahead and make them 1 sign. And what you enter, okay, what you enter it will look something like this, right? The last term is -4, okay? So what does the first term is still going to be +6. So what does your second term and your third term become? Okay, you enter them. Do not add and subtract them. Just enter the whole entire expression. Once you enter this whole expression, then the next question on the answer you got from question 5, okay, which is this question, perform the operation, then tell me what the answer is. Okay, so these 2 are 2 separate questions using the same expression. Okay. All right, consider the following operation. Which 2 number can be canceled out? What factor should be used to cancel out the 2 numbers? There's 2 different responses. Okay, so which 2 factor can be canceled out? Just look at it. This is multiplication between fractions. So tell me which two can be canceled out and what number do you use? So separate them with a semicolon for me, please. Okay. All right. Consider the following operation after you find the LCD, because this is subtraction between 2 fractions. Find the equivalent fraction using the LCD. What are the 2 numerators that will be added and subtracted? Okay. So find your LCD and then find the equivalent. Okay. Find the equivalent fraction using the LCD. That means tell me what the new numerator going to be. Tell me what the 2 numerator going to be. Okay, separate them by a comma for me, please. All right, this one, same problem as that one, right? So now, once you know what are the 2 new numerators, then perform the following operations. Make sure you reduce to the lowest term. So this question and that question kind of goes together, right? But it's 2 separate questions. So hopefully this video helps a little bit. When we talk more about algebra, we will continue to talk about terms, and I will show you how to identify them and how to combine them. Okay, thank you for watching.